Elite Facts presents
12 most wicked people to be a part of the Nazi Party. We can't believe we have to open with this statement, but there's no such thing as a good Nazi, so before anybody makes assumptions, there you go. However, that's not to say they're all equal in terms of how horrible they are. Some were just doing what their countries required of them. Others, however, they just made things a whole lot worse. Here are 12 of the worst people to be a part of the Nazi Party.
12.
Ilsa Koch. Known as the Bitch of Buchenwald because of her sadistic cruelty towards prisoners, Ilsa Koch was married to another wicked Nazi SS, Karl Otto Koch, but outshone him in the depraved, inhumane disregard for life which was her trademark. She used her sexual prowess by wandering around the camps naked with a whip, and if any man so much as glanced at her, she would have them shot on the spot. The most infamous accusation against Koch was that she had selected inmates with interesting tattoos to be killed so that their skins could be made into lampshades for her home, though fortunately no evidence of these lampshades has been found. After the war, she was arrested and spent time in prison on different charges, eventually hanging herself in her cell in 1967, apparently consumed by guilt.
11.
Hermann Goering. A World War I veteran, the Reichsmarshal was head of the Luftwaffe and the founder of the Gestapo. After the fall of France, he stole millions of pounds worth of art from Jews and amassed a personal fortune. Goering took part in the Beer Hall Push of 1923 and was wounded in the groin. Subsequently, after taking morphine for pain relief, he became addicted to the drug for the rest of his life. In 1940, the Marshal ordered the bombing of the civilian population of Britain, known as the Blitz, and was involved in planning the Holocaust. Goering was the highest-ranking defendant during the Nuremberg trials. Sentenced to hang, he committed suicide by ingesting cyanide in his cell the night before his execution.
10.
Paul Blobel. During the German invasion of the Soviet Union, he commanded Sonderkommando 4A of Einsatzgruppe C, that was active in Ukraine. Following Wehrmacht troops into Ukraine, the Einsatzgruppen would be responsible for liquidating political and racial undesirables. Blobel was primarily responsible for the Babi Yar massacre at Kiev. Up to 59,018 executions are attributable to Blobel, though during testimony he was alleged to have killed 10 to 15,000. He was later sentenced to death by the U.S. Nuremberg Military Tribunal in the Einsatzgruppen trial. He was hanged at Landsberg Prison on June 18, 1951.
9.
Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Austrian-born Kaltenbrunner was chief of security in the Reich, where he replaced Reinhard Heydrich. He was president of Interpol from 1943 to 1945 and was there to destroy the enemies within the Reich. Kaltenbrunner was a physically imposing man with scars on his cheeks, which made him look even more like the tyrant he really was. Kaltenbrunner was one of the main perpetrators of the Holocaust, and he was hanged after the Nuremberg trials on 16th of October 1946. He was the highest-ranking SS man to be hanged.
8.
Joseph Kramer. Kramer was the commandant of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Dubbed the Beast of Belsen by camp inmates, he was a notorious Nazi war criminal, directly responsible for the deaths of thousands of people. Kramer adopted his own draconian policies at Auschwitz and Belsen and, along with Irma Gries, he terrorized his prisoners without remorse. After the war, he was convicted of war crimes and hanged in Hamelin Prison by noted British executioner Albert Pierrepoint. While on trial, he actually stated his lack of feelings and said he was, quote, just following orders.
7.
Oskar Dirlewanger. World War I veteran Dr. Oskar Dirlewanger led the infamous SS Dirlewanger Brigade, a penal battalion comprised of the sickest, most vicious criminals in the Reich. Dirlewanger raped two 13-year-old girls on separate occasions in the 1930s and lost his doctor title after being imprisoned, only to have it reinstated after his bravery fighting in the Spanish Civil War. He volunteered for the SS at the start of World War II and was given his own battalion due to his excellent soldiery. Dirlewanger's unit was employed in operations against partisans in the occupied Soviet Union, and he and his soldiers are widely believed to have tortured, raped, and murdered civilians, including children, and he allegedly fed female hostages strychnine in order to entertain his soldiers while the hostages died in agony. Dirlewanger was captured by the French in a hospital after being injured at the front, as he had always led his soldiers into battle. The French handed him over to the Polish, who locked him up and beat and tortured him over the next few days. He died from injuries inflicted by the Polish guards around June 5, 1945.
6.
Odilo Globocnik. Odilo Globocnik was a prominent Austrian Nazi and later an SS leader. He was one of the men most responsible for the murder of millions of people during the Holocaust. Globocnik was responsible for liquidating the Warsaw Ghetto, which contained about 500,000 Jews, the largest Jewish community in Europe, and the second largest in the world after New York. He's also known for liquidating the Bialystok Ghetto, which stood out for its long resistance to German occupation, and for settling a large quantity of Poles under the premise of ethnic cleansing. He was in charge of the implementation and supervision of the Lublin Reservation, to which 95,000 Jews were deported, with its adjacent network of forced labor camps in the Lublin district. He was also in charge of over 45,000 Jewish laborers. On May 21st, shortly after capture, Globocnik committed suicide by means of a cyanide capsule hidden in his mouth.
5.
Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann was the organizational talent that orchestrated the mass deportation of Jews from their countries into the waiting ghettos and extermination camps. A prodigy of Heydrich, he is sometimes referred to as the architect of the Holocaust. He learned Hebrew and studied all things Jewish in order to manipulate Jews, through his power of coercion, to leave their occupied territories and possessions in favor of a better life in the ghettos. At the end of the war, he was doing the same to Hungarian Jews, and if it wasn't for the intervention of Raoul Wallenberg, the number of victims of the Holocaust would have been much higher. He fled Germany at the end of the war via a rat line to South America and was captured by the Mossad in Argentina. He was extradited to Israel and executed by hanging in 1962 after a highly publicized trial. Eichmann's death was, and is, the only civil execution ever carried out in Israel.
4.
Joseph Mengele. Mengele initially gained notoriety for being one of the SS physicians who supervised the selection of arriving transports of prisoners, determining who was to be killed and who was to become a forced laborer, but is far more infamous for performing grisly human experiments on camp inmates, for which Mengele was called the Angel of Death. His crimes were evil and many. When it was reported that one hospital block was infested with lice, Mengele gassed every single one of the 750 women assigned to it. Mengele used Auschwitz as an opportunity to continue his research on heredity, using inmates for human experimentation. He was particularly interested in identical twins. Mengele's experiments included attempts to take one twin's eyeballs and attach them to the back of the other twin's head, changing eye color by injecting chemicals into children's eyes, various amputations of limbs, and other brutal surgeries. He survived the war, and after a period living incognito in Germany, he fled to South America, where he evaded capture for the rest of his life, despite being hunted as a Nazi war criminal.
3.
Reinhard Heydrich. Heydrich was appointed protector of Bohemia and Moravia. In August of 1940, he was appointed and served as president of Interpol. He chaired the 1942 Wannsee Conference, which discussed plans for the deportation and extermination of all Jews in German-occupied territory, thus being the mastermind of the Holocaust. He was attacked by British-trained Czech agents on May 27, 1942, sent to assassinate him in Prague. He died just a little over a week later of complications arising from his injuries. The foundations of genocide were laid by Heydrich and carried out in Operation Reinhard in his name.
2.
Adolf Hitler. Yeah, we bet we took you by surprise here, didn't we? You're probably thinking, who could possibly be worse than the leader of the Third Reich? Don't worry, we'll get to that. Adolf Hitler went from being a lance corporal in the German army to Chancellor of Germany in 15 years. The Holocaust may have been his subordinates' doing, but he knew about it, which, amazingly, has only been fairly recently proven. Adolf Hitler had a major role in initiating the bloodiest conflict ever, which still has a massive bearing on the world to this day. His megalomania saw large parts of Europe devastated in his lifetime and forced into communism after the war.
1.
Heinrich Himmler. Oh, what's that you're saying? There's someone worse than Adolf Hitler? Well, okay, that is up for debate, considering Hitler was the leader of the Third Reich. However, he could not have done it without this man. Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust and considered by some to be the biggest mass murderer ever, although it's really Joseph Stalin. The Holocaust would not have happened if not for this man. He tried to breed a master race of Nordic appearance, the Aryan race. His plans for racial purity were ended by Hitler's vanity in making rash military decisions, rather than letting his generals make them, thus ending the war prematurely. Himmler was captured after the war. He unsuccessfully tried to negotiate with the West and was genuinely shocked to be treated as a criminal upon his capture. He committed suicide by swallowing a cyanide capsule he had bit down on.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more Elite Facts.